But yes, let's talk about the city of Wayne. So let's give you guys a complete timeline here. I'll try to break it down for you very simply. So March 28th, 2024, I had lived in the city of Wayne for approximately 1 month at this point. Not even a month. And that was the first break-in of the fire department. The police department had not, they're not involved yet, right? I've been here a month. I'm not involved in politics. Nobody, knows me, right? I'm an unknown quantity in the city of Wayne at this point, 4 weeks in. And the city of Wayne fire department's already breaking into my house, already breaking into my backyard to enforce a non-codified policy. This is their routine administrative enforcement, right? This is just their routine. They said so as much, right? They endorsed so. They said that they do this about 300 times a year and that people just comply, right? So people just comply with their rights being violated. And, that's the mentality, right? That's what the fire chief himself said. That's what they said on the scene, right? They do this all the time. And, just a routine kind of enforcement for them, right? Well, they didn't have a warrant. They didn't have consent. Well, of course, they're going to argue, well, they didn't need consent, but they knocked on the door. So why would you knock on the door if you didn't need consent? It's kind of weird, but okay. I guess we'll go with that argument. It's just really the city of Wayne. Again, I'll get into it later, but it's the logic is baffling, right? The logic, if you want to call it that, or lack thereof. So over a year goes by, about 13 or so months goes by without another incident, right? So Mr. McFarlin, me, I started to engage roughly around the time John Zook Jr. got killed, right? June of 24. That's when I started to give any sort of shit about the city of Wayne politically, right? And so fast forward to May 9th, May of 2025, right? May 9th of 2025. I'm having a bonfire. And this time the fire department shows up again, right? But this time they don't knock, right? They don't ask for consent, right? They just walk straight to the backyard and give me a false dichotomy, it's called a false dichotomy, an ultimatum, right? A false choice, right? You're going to do this or that, right? You're going to do this or this is going to happen, right? So they gave me this ultimatum and told me, put the fire out or we're going to put the fire out for you. And then we're going to charge you with interference, right? So I, of course, said, get fucked to that. And so the fire department, I told the fire department, I said, look, you guys do whatever you're going to do. Obviously, I can't control what you guys do, but I need you to do whatever you're going to do from the sidewalk, right? This is private property. It's clearly posted. You're clearly, you're not welcome here, clearly. And so whatever you're going to do it from the sidewalk. And so that's what they did momentarily. They went to the sidewalk. They called their buddies, their boss, whomever, their Boy Scout leader. And they had a conversation, and then the police showed up. And then again, the police gave me this false dichotomy. You're going to put the fire out or we're going to put it out for you, and we're going to charge you with interference. Right? So, of course, my response to that was to move as far away from the fire pit as humanly possible. Right? So I knew, I was, wherever I go, they're going to go. So, I walked to the sidewalk with them, and I was on my knees, on my private property. And I had my hands up. And they arrested me. They detained me. And, arrested, same thing. They charged me with interference. Before they attempted to even put the fire out, of course, they're on video asking, how are they going to spin this, right? How are they going to spin this? And, calling the charge loose, right? Like I guess like a pussy, right? And so, we got this loose pussy charge, and how are they going to spin it? And then, the Sergeant Williams, right, who responds to the scene, later, he asked the question, well, interfering with what? What did he interfere with? And James Sermon couldn't answer the question. The police officer of the year couldn't answer Couldn't answer that question. So the city of Wayne's police officers of the year don't know what probable cause is. They don't know what an ordinance is. They don't know what a duly enacted ordinance is. And they don't know what the Fourth Amendment is, right? So kind of scary. But anyways, I digress. So, I'm charged. I'm arrested. Before this, fire department even attempts to extinguish the fire, they lie on the police report. They say I was roaming around in the yard, right? Even though at no point in time was I roaming around in the yard. But don't let facts get in the way of a good lie, I suppose. And so, yeah, I was charged with interference. I was released, and they extinguished my fire pit. They, sprayed the entirety of the fire pit all around the surrounding area of it as well, so that way I couldn't have a fire for a few days, right? So not only did they search and seize my property, but they destroyed it as well, without a warrant, without consent, without exigent circumstances. So then we get into, May 10th, right? The very next day, I called the fire marshal to have a conversation with him to say, hey, what the hell? You authorized this. You're the one who, not only condoned this behavior, but you asked for this behavior. You gave the instructions, as a matter of fact, to your employees, to your subordinates, if you will. And, they even stated so in the video that, we're here because the fire marshal called us, right? The fire marshal, has ordered that this fire pit be extinguished. So without him ever being on the property, without him ever actually physically assessing the fire pit, he's ordering that it be extinguished, right? So kind of weird, right? So that's a policy maker, right? That's literally someone who wrote the open burn policy. So that's a policy maker, which means that it's a 1983. The policymaker is responsible for the violation, and so the city has repeatedly endorsed the behaviors of the fire marshal, Jeremy Schneider, and they didn't endorse it enough to leave it alone, right? Because the city of Wayne, they fucked up. They tried to do too much. So, I was charged with this interference charge. And then the next day I was charged with obscene telecommunications because, I had the gall to ask my elected or non-elected official, right? City council hired official, right? But nonetheless, he's in a position supposedly to represent me. And so I have a right to redress my grievances with government actors. So, I call and, try to have a conversation. I was obviously understandably upset. I just had my rights violated. This is now the second time. Well, instead of, addressing the constitutional rights violations, they decided, the city, that is, Carolyn Miller, decided to charge me with obscene telecommunications. Right, of course, I was never given any discovery for this charge. That took until November of 2025, right? So nearly 5 or 6 months later, 5 or 6 months after the fact. So 5 or 6 months after the fact, and now I am finally given, the audio, right? The video, the information that we had FOIA'd, months previously to that. We had asked for discovery as well. We never got it. That's why we have a discovery preservation order, which the city of Wayne 29th District Court mysteriously scrubbed away from the Register of Actions, right? So you have no indication of this discovery preservation order, where it comes from, where it originates from, because the city of Wayne has, let's just say, cooked the ROA a little bit, Register of Actions, right? That's kind of like your whole, that's your whole blueprint, right? That's your whole kind of outline of your case, right? That's supposed to be historically accurate, which it's not, conveniently, of course. But so I'm charged with these two bullshit charges. I get this bullshit arraignment in June, right? June 3rd, as a matter of fact. I was almost held in contempt of court just for simply asking questions, right? Brita O'Leary doesn't allow for civil discourse. She doesn't allow you to be made aware of what you're charged with. Because up until this point, up until this arraignment, I didn't even know what I was charged with. So pretty good due process there, right? It's like, it's surprise charges. And, the city of Wayne, like I said, they thought they were slick, right? They thought they were really doing something. And what they were doing was building my 1983 Monell. Carolyn Miller and Michael Bosnick, I thank them for their malicious prosecution, because it really truly exemplifies to the world, right, to the public, to the people of Wayne, Michigan, it truly exemplifies how low morally these people are, right? And so, I have to play along with it, right? I mean, at this point, I'm just blown away that the city would even think that, that this would be acceptable even for a moment, let alone for months and months and months. But the city pressed on. The city of Wayne pressed on, and they, after this bullshit arraignment, still no discovery, right? I hired another lawyer, had to, because, the city of Wayne is just really weird, right? That my lawyers would just suddenly, it was like they were in quicksand all of a sudden, right? They just couldn't do anything right. Like everything the city of Wayne, city attorneys touch, right? GMH Law, Carolyn Miller, Michael Bosnick, everything those people seem to touch just turns to shit. I don't know why. Maybe because they're just not good lawyers. Or maybe when you're defending a client like the city of Wayne that's just morally bankrupt, and, I guess the dollar bill is the end all be all, right? Forget a veteran's constitutional rights, someone that actually served and fought for this country like myself. Forget us, right? Forget our wants and needs and constitutional requirements. Let's just cover for, some shitbag municipal actors, right? And so I guess the money truly is the root of all evil. And, my case really exemplifies that the city of Wayne is morally bankrupt. As I, told you guys from the very beginning, when I became aware of, just how, big a shitbags these people truly are. But, even I, to be quite frank with you, I underestimated or under-imagined, right? I didn't underestimate, but I under-imagined just the sheer level of buffoonery that the city of Wayne engages with, right? How they act, right? Just their general premise, their general, kind of their default sort of, mechanisms of enforcement, if you will. So anyways, so we go through all these, bullshit hearings, right? The city remands me 7 times, I believe it was, or more, 8 times, charged me with all sorts of crimes and, everything that gets disposed of. Well, finally on July 10th, right? So let's back up. So before we get that, we have the arraignment, and then we go all the way to July 10th, right? I have a lawyer. He puts in a discovery order. He puts an appearance and demands order, and doesn't get any of it, right? And gets obstructed the entire way. My lawyer, previous lawyer, Jermaine Warwick, he was just ineffective. But the city of Wayne was doing a lot of dirty things, and obviously it's all about the Benjamins at the end of the day, guys. That's what I learned about this whole court proceeding and this whole case, really, is that it's just all about the Benjamins, right? That's what this so-called justice system is based around. It's not based around gathering the truth or what actually happened, what actually occurred, right? The facts, right? Is this open burn policy even codified, for one? And 2, why does 1278 and 1278.07 say that it's been repealed on your city website, right? So you have a non-enacted policy, right? Non-enforceable law that also cites repealed laws, right? So it's just kind of like, it's a double negative, right? But they thought that double negative equaled a positive, I guess, somehow, right? They must have forgotten that we're doing addition and subtraction here. We're not doing multiplication and division. But I digress, right? So the city of Wayne, here they go on July 10th, right? They give me more bond conditions, of course, right? Because it's, not enough to just enforce fake laws, right? And to violate someone's rights and, all that. It's not enough to do that. Well, now they got to add these bond conditions, right? Because, these are, as they've admittedly said, these are weak charges, right? These are loose charges, right? Loose charges. That was Gombrowski that said that, Officer Gombrowski. And so loose charges turned into the most punitive, the most vague bond conditions on the planet, right? And they're just overbroad, and just never ending, right? And so the city of Wayne, of course, they put these, because this is what my experience was, right? Jermaine Warwick, he knows at this point that there's no codified ordinance in the city of Wayne. He knows that he could file one simple motion to dismiss this and it's gone, right? He knows that. But instead of doing that, he decides to argue that I was following the ordinance, right? The ordinance that doesn't exist, right? That I was following it, even though, well, clearly there's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. There's no exigent circumstances, so therefore this is an unconstitutional search, right? I mean, that should have been obvious enough by anyone who looked at the videos, right? I mean, that's clear as day. But then I pointed out the fact, oh, hey, by the way, sir, you should know this, but apparently you don't somehow. Nobody in this courtroom knows this, but that's not a codified ordinance. That has no ordinance number. There's no date of enactment, and it's written so poorly. Let's be clear. I think Jeremy Schneider, the fire marshal, might be illiterate because it's written so poorly that, I mean, it's mind-boggling that you can't just obviously look at this and tell that this isn't an ordinance. But I prove it. I point it out. I show the city website. I show, hey, 1278's been repealed. That's the only thing on this piece of paper that would even pertain to this situation. Well, that's been repealed. So you can't enforce a law that doesn't exist, or a law that's used to exist but no longer exists. And you can't enforce a policy as law because it's not, right? Words have definitions. So, but despite that, Jermaine Warwick goes into court and says, I'm following the ordinance. And that, and then Carolyn Miller, right? The malicious prosecutor, well, she responds with, she wants to add more bond conditions, right? There's not enough bond conditions. So they add this stipulation. Can't call the police can only call the police for actual emergencies. They never describe what an actual emergency is, of course. So then I get out of court, and quite literally, as I return home, there's a City of Wayne Public Works, Christopher Colwell. He's in front of my house in uniform, in a city vehicle, blocking my driveway, yelling obscenities at me. Parked right in the middle of the road, blocking my driveway, harassing, intimidating, threatening me. And, I have kids in the house, and I have a wife, and I have, tenants that I'm responsible for. So, I call the police because I'm be honest myself, guys. I was, a little scared. And the City of Wayne came, and, what did they decide to do? Well, they decided to arrest me and charge me with disorderly conduct. But they charged me with disorderly conduct and resisting arrest, and then they added an assault and battery on a police officer because they said I spat on a police officer, right? I spat on a police officer, even though I spit, my wife recorded it, thank God, because, their body camera, of course, conveniently got, it magically fell off, right? So my wife got it all on camera. Luckily, a few people did, and, clearly you can see there was no spit that hit anyone. The officer didn't even react to it, right? That's how just morally bankrupt these people are. But, nonetheless, they charged me because they said I violated my bond, right? They said I was under arrest for a conditional bond violation because after they came out and assessed the situation, because they apparently did some investigation of some sort, they determined that there was no actual emergency, right? So they get to determine that, right? So it's like retroactively, you can just hindsight's 2020, right? And so, yeah, I'm charged with a conditional bond violation. Now, boom. Now the whole case is about this conditional bond violation. It's not even about, well, where'd the bond come from? Where did this all originate, right? And so the city, of course, used that and ran with it and used that to punitively punish me. And they kept me in jail for over 3 months, over 93 days in jail. And I don't know, was it 3 months of house arrest? Banished from Wayne, Michigan, right? Couldn't even live in the city of Wayne, Michigan. Couldn't even be in the city limits. Had to be on house arrest at Montcalm County, right? Because, well, you guys have already heard it all here. So, but But the malicious prosecution didn't start. Did I ever get discovery? No, not really. I got some tidbits and pieces of it, some video discovery tidbits, right? But we never got full discovery for any date, for anything. We never even got partial, really. I mean, we got tidbits, right? We got little tidbits like crumbs, right? Breadcrumbs, whatever they want to give you, whenever they want to give it to you. And, you know, like for instance, like July 5th, right? The day after 4th of July, the city, this was their fourth break-in at this point. And there was 3 officers there. 3 police officers means 3 body cameras, right? But we only got 1 body camera, oddly enough, from Elza body, right? Not from the lieutenant and the sergeant, right? They were both without name tags and apparently without body cameras either. But it looked like they did have body cameras, if I do remember correctly. But yeah, 3 officers, 1 body camera. Of course, this is, you know, like a year after the incident, right? So, I mean, no reasonable person would think that that's a reasonable timeline to release, you know, 3 videos, right? 3 body camera footages. But yeah, so now we have this discovery preservation order from Judge Plakas because the city of Wayne, just like I said, even I was just quite frankly not imaginative enough to be able, you know, to envision this level of malicious and vindictive prosecution. But this video is getting a bit long. I do have to upload this video, and then I will post a part 2 discussing what happened, or, you know, kind of give you guys more backstory here. But I hope this video has been informative. Everything I say in this video is accurate. You know, so City of Wayne, you know, Quarles will tell you, oh, no, don't listen to what you see on the internet, while he's stuffing his face, about to have a heart attack. So we hope Donald Quarles doesn't have a heart attack. We hope he goes and finds the keto diet and loses 150 pounds and becomes a, you know, fitness figure. But I live in the city of Wayne, Michigan, and I'm realistic, and based off what I've seen in this city, I don't expect anyone to admit responsibility, nor count calories, nor do anything at all that would be transparent and accountable. I've seen the complete and utter opposite from the city of Wayne, really since day one, since I moved here. You know, so, but yeah, we'll get you part 2 here, maybe even a part 3 soon, and talk to you guys soon. Thank you.